The Mario Kart Booster Course Pass. Some people love it, some people hate it. Personally, I think it's kinda lazy on Nintendo's end, but over time, I've come to appreciate it more and more. I mean, you can't really go wrong with 48 new retro tracks in an already perfect game, so before Nintendo releases like a bajillion more tracks, I might as well rank the tracks that have already been released. I'll mainly be focusing on how these tracks compare to their originals, as well as any other major changes. And before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you aren't already. I make content on a weekly basis, so there's always something to look forward to. Now, Lakitu, would you care to do the honors? Starting off, we have 3DS Toad Circuit. This is the only track in Wave 1 that I wasn't looking forward to. Not because it's a bad track or anything, but it's just too boring. I mean, besides the graphics, almost nothing has changed since its Mario Kart 7 counterpart, and I mean it. There's still a small glide ramp in the middle and a shortcut near the end, and the toad balloons are still floating high, but nothing stands out to me that wasn't already in the original, and it's not like there's anything they could have done without drastically changing the layout. But that only begs the question, why remake this track to begin with? I get it, this track was already in Tour and was easy to port over, but I feel like there were better options. Also, Nintendo. Nice job with the textures on this track. You really outdid yourself this time, wow! Tourist Tokyo Blur was not one that I remembered fondly, but after experiencing the remake, I'm glad this track got chosen to come back. It doesn't do anything too crazy or anything, but this one has always stood out to me for some reason. First of all, I think it's really cool that we're racing through the streets of Tokyo. I've always wanted to go to Japan, and while I haven't gotten to do that yet, this kinda gives me a small taste of what it's like. One other thing I forgot to mention, for those who don't already know, Mario Kart Tour tracks contain multiple versions of each course, and instead of choosing just one version of each course to use in Mario Kart 8, each lap is a different version. In other words, each lap is completely different, making each track feel much more varied compared to others. Here, the first lap takes you through the streets of Tokyo, while the second lap takes you to a completely different part of the city, and the third lap takes you onto this highway where you have to dodge swamps and then glide to the finish line. Oh, it's so good! To think that we're only on the second track and they're already this good, the truth is you haven't seen anything yet. I may not have grown up with Mario Kart 64, but I do have fond memories of playing N64 Choco Mountain and Mario Kart DS as a kid. But I barely even recognize this course anymore because of all the changes in Mario Kart 8. For one thing, the mountains actually look like mountains instead of big mud piles. There's also this new cave section and a gliding section afterwards. Most of these additions only change the course aesthetically and don't change the overall layout too much, but even so, this track almost feels like a brand new course. The developers made some quality of life improvements, but didn't deviate from the original design, which is exactly how all retro tracks should feel. The only thing that could be seen as a negative is the music. The remix is fine, but there is no way they were ever going to top that sweet N64 tune. Like with Choco Mountain, GBA Sky Garden was one I played a ton of in Mario Kart DS. This was actually one of the tracks that I wanted to see get remade the most, and boy am I sure glad they did. This track got the complete makeover treatment similar to Cheeseland and Ribbon Road. The layout has been kept relatively the same, but a ton of new elements have been added to keep things interesting. For example, there's this new shortcut on these vines, there's a mushroom that you have to bounce on, and the elevation this time around has gone wild to accommodate for a new gliding section at the end. Overall, the changes do make things feel pretty different, but I can still tell that this is Sky Garden. This is another retro track done right, and there really isn't anything else I'd want to change about it. Out of all the tracks I've previously mentioned, none of them come close to the amount of nostalgia I have for DS Shroom Ridge. In fact, I still remember the day this track was announced to be coming to Mario Kart 8.
Shroom Ridge! They're finally remaking Shroom Ridge! Oh my gosh!
Ah, good times. Now you might look at this track and think, that looks kind of simple. And you'd be right, but once you play this track for the first time, it moves you. There's something about those tight turns and fast-moving vehicles that makes this course special. I know I'm really nostalgic for this track, but even before this track was remade, I still held it in high regard. So what does this track do to stand out from the original? Well, there's a secret glide ramp about halfway through, and there's another shortcut near the end of this fan thingy, and that's really it. Aside from the obvious improvements to the graphics, this course is almost nearly identical to the DS version. But personally, I don't really mind that at all. This track is special to me and I'll always hold it close to my heart. Whether Nintendo tries to keep it the same or change everything about it, I really won't care because... come on, it's Shroom Ridge. Also, this remix slaps. Mario Kart Wii is another very special game to me, and one of my favorite tracks from that game is Coconut Mall. In my eyes, Coconut Mall is one of those tracks that'll never be bad no matter how many changes are made to it. But Nintendo sure tried. I guess we might as well get the elephant out of the room. This remake isn't that good. Okay, maybe that's not the best term to use, but it's very underwhelming compared to all the other ones we've talked about. First of all, where am I? There are absolutely no trace of your Miis whatsoever on this course. They're not in the cars, or on the sidelines, or even on the cool little posters. And speaking of the cars, what happened out there? The cars don't even move anymore. You don't even spin out if you crash into them. They're just there for the sake of being there. And by gosh, what's with the textures in the mall? Everything looks so bland and uninteresting. I can get behind Nintendo being lazy on other tracks. I mean, I don't think there's any strictly Toad Circuit fanboys out there, but why'd they have to do this to Coconut Mall? They really didn't do this track justice and just ended up angering fans. Now you might be wondering, if I have all these things to complain about, why is this track at the number 3 spot? Well, it's like I said earlier. No matter how much Nintendo tries to screw this course up, it's still okay. There's definitely a lot more going on in this track compared to most others, so at least it has that going for it. At the end of the day, this is still Coconut Mall, but just a really mediocre version of it. So I was thinking that maybe as a joke, I would talk about this track in French, since it is located in Paris and I do speak a little bit of French. But then I realized how complicated that would be, and most people would probably stop watching, and wow, I can't believe I'm putting this in the video. Anyways, Tour's Paris Promenade is one of the most unique courses I've ever played. I guess the first thing to mention is that we're in Paris. There's the Eiffel Tower, and the Arc de Triomphe, and the Luxor Obelisk. Okay, not gonna lie, I don't actually know what that last one is. But the point is, this track is very faithful to the city it's based on, and like with Tokyo Blur, this track also changes up quite a bit with each lap. Hell, on the third lap you drive through the entire track backwards, which actually works better than you'd think. It's really cool passing all the racers in last place because it makes you feel all badass. The entire course is filled with so much charm and really focuses on the little details. Like, sometimes I forget that this is even a tour track because of how good it looks. I really hope that any other tour tracks that come over do as good a job as Paris Promenade, because this course is just phenomenal. So just like any other human being who's ever ranked Wave 1 of the Booster Course Pass before, I have to put Tour's Ninja Hideaway at number 1. I never played this track in Tour when it was available, so this was the first place I got to experience it. And hey, I wasn't expecting too much from a Tour track I'd never heard of, but after playing it for the first time, this is incredible! This track has so much going on, it's insane! There's so much going on that I don't even know how to describe it all. So first you cross this bridge and go into this ninja house filled with all these cool decorations, then the path splits up with one of them taking you all the way to the ceiling, then there's all these ninja stars that go up and down and you have to drive around them, and then there's this gliding section that takes you really high in the air and you can either choose to go on the road or up in the rafters, then you're on this roof doing tricks and making tight turns all around, and before you know it, the track is over and you've just had one hell of a Mario Kart experience. There are so many split paths and shortcuts on this track that every single race feels brand new. Like, I found several new shortcuts while getting footage for this video alone. That is something to be praised. This track is easily one of the best in the entire series, and we should consider ourselves lucky that this track has been preserved for generations to come. Wave 2 of the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass is finally here, and it's miles better than the first one. The tracks are way more interesting, and the addition of a brand new course has really brought about a lot of excitement. So like any normal teenage Nintendo YouTuber, I'll be ranking the worst and the best tracks from Wave 2. I'll mainly be focusing on how these tracks compare to their originals, as well as any other major changes. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. No reason, just do it. Now then, on with the show! Coming in at last place we have SNES Mario Circuit Free. It shouldn't be a surprise to see this track so low on the list, especially considering that it's nearly 30 years old. I usually try to give each track the benefit of the doubt and not take its age into consideration, but man, there is just nothing here. The layout is the same as it was back in Super Mario Kart almost 3 decades ago. They could have changed it up at least a tiny bit, but no, and the graphics are just subpar at best. I mean, it looks fine, but compared to other tracks in this wave, it's clear that this track got the least amount of time put into it. I really wish that Nintendo had put more love into this track, or better yet, thrown the RMX versions from Tour. That would have made this track way more exciting. But in the end, this one's just okay. Not too bad, but not too great either. Also, I love how Nintendo put cones in front of these oil spills. Way to add immersion to one of the most lifeless and soul-draining Mario Kart tracks of all time, guys. Next up is GBA Snowland. This was one that I was originally excited by, but a bit saddened by when I tried it for myself. I think I was expecting something more akin to the Sky Garden remake from Wave 1, and was a bit disappointed when it wasn't up to snuff. I still think this track is really great, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it could have been a lot better. For example, the course doesn't have too many interesting elements that make it stand out. I mean, you've got your penguins and your occasional ramp, but there's nothing too over the top. I would have preferred it if the elevation was a bit more intense. I think that would have made it a lot more fun to navigate. The ice physics from Super Circuit are also here, and I really like how it's implemented. It's more noticeable than on other ice tracks, but I definitely appreciate the added difficulty. The remix music is also 10 out of 10, just saying. I really do like what Nintendo's done with this track, but I just wish that they had done just a little bit more to spice up this old favorite. If you had told me back in 2019 that Tour's New York Mint would one day end up in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I probably would have looked at you funny. But 3 years later, that fantasy is somehow turned into some sort of twisted reality. But it's not all bad, since this track feels right at home with some of Mario Kart 8's own offerings. The city aesthetic is really cool and feels just like New York City, with its skyscrapers and bright lights. You'll also find cars parked in the streets, overflowing sewers, and Goombas taking a midnight stroll through the park. I know Mario characters aren't real, but I've seen some real Goombas on the streets where I'm from, so this is pretty accurate. The track also splits up at some parts, allowing you to go different ways. The alternate paths don't feel all too different, but it's still a nice touch. And on the third lap, you get to go through this building and then a parking garage. It's just so cool. And I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to see Donkey Kong the musical? Is that like Shrek the musical? Will Seth Rogen be playing Donkey Kong? Why does this billboard create more questions than answers? Come on, Nintendo, make this a reality. N64 Calamari Desert is the desert level of all time. That's it, that's the review. Okay, but seriously, I've never been that big a fan of Calamari Desert, but this version is probably my favorite one yet. You see, it starts off normal, but when you get to the second lap, everything changes. You'll jump off this ramp onto the train tracks and go through the tunnel. You even have to dodge the train when it comes around, which is just a great touch. Apparently this is how the track was in Mario Kart Tour, so it's cool that this new version has forever been preserved. Even all the shortcuts from the Mario Kart 7 version return, making this the definitive Calamari Desert experience. If you're a fan of this track, don't pass this one up because this one is definitely worth your money. Tour Sydney Sprint was one I was really looking forward to. I hadn't even played this one before, but just by looking at the footage in the trailer, it was clear that this track was going to be a good one. This course is all over the place. It's constantly ticking through iconic parts of Sydney, and it makes for quite an excellent track. My favorite part is when you're on the bridge and there's all these ramps with dash panels and you get to go super fast, and the music is just amazing. It doesn't sound like anything you hear from Australia, but I mean, who cares? I really like how you drive backwards through some parts of the course too. It really makes this track stand out. The only issue with this one is the graphics, but that's a small price to pay for this awesome time. This course really has me excited for future tour tracks, seeing how creative and unique this one is. Mario Kart Wii is one of my favorite games of all time, so it's no surprise that Mushroom George is one of my favorites. This remake isn't as good as the original, but it's still a really fun one to race on. The biggest change has to be the cavern with all the mushrooms. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like the layout has completely changed. The mushrooms appear bigger, and there seem to be fewer of them as well. Like I said, that may or may not be true, but it's definitely throwing me off a bit. But that's okay, since the rest of this track is basically the same as the original. And that's completely fine because in my opinion, this is one of those tracks that doesn't need too many improvements. The original is so great that I don't mind seeing not as many changes, and this remake did just that. But before we move on, let's pay our respects to the missing shroom. I'm gonna miss you, buddy. And just like that, we're at number 2 with Sky High Sundae. When I first learned that this wave was going to contain a brand new track, you bet I was thrilled. I mean, this is exciting stuff. This was the first original track in a mainline Mario Kart game since like 2015, so you bet I skipped my uncle's funeral for this. And the fact that this track was going to be exclusive to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and only Mario Kart 8 Deluxe made it that more special. And then it was brought to Mario Kart Tour like a week later. Now that was a sad day. At least the track itself is amazing. I've been begging for a food-themed Mario Kart track for years now, and while we've kinda gotten that in the past, it wasn't necessarily to the extent I wanted it to be. Sky High Sundae, on the other hand, is exactly what I wanted and then some. I mean, you start the race in a freaking freezer, talk about making an entrance, and then you're gliding past ice cream, and driving on s'mores, and tricking off ice cubes. Every step of the way is filled with something new, and I absolutely love it. You do spend a lot of time in the air with the amount of tricks you're doing, and I think it's a nice change of pace. I've been seeing a lot of people online complain that the overabundance of tricking ruins the course for them, but I think it helps spice up the gameplay in a new and refreshing way. If I ever go back and make another top 10 on the best Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tracks, this one would definitely be on it. But for now, we have to move on to number 1.
Wahaha! What did you expect?
Oh yeah, baby. At number 1 we have DS Waluigi Pinball. The DS version of this track is my favorite Mario Kart track of all time, so this one had a lot to live up to, and I think it did an excellent job of replicating the original, albeit with a few small issues. The main gripe I have with this version is the lack of some sound effects. The original Waluigi Pinball was famous for having custom sound effects, and while a few of them are here, some of them aren't, which kinda stinks. I also prefer the graphics of the original one as well. There's definitely a lot more color and detail in the remake, but there's just something about the original color palette that this version didn't quite replicate. Okay, enough complaining. So in case you couldn't tell, this track is quite good, as all Waluigi tracks should be. The layout is just as zany and fun as the original because they're exactly the same. That's right, they didn't pull another Wario Stadium on us and change half the track. No, this is the real deal. And all the colors and lights around you really emphasize the idea that you're in a pinball machine. And with the pinballs going down the track with you and everything else going on, it's just so magical. Like seriously, this is a god tier track, no questions asked. Even the music is really amazing, if not more so than the original. Everything about this track adds up to an incredible experience that's unlike anything Mario Kart's ever seen before. After how good the last 2 waves of the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass were, I didn't think Nintendo was going to be able to top them. But then they did the unthinkable and gave us the greatest Christmas present of all time, Wave Free. I don't know how they did it, but somehow Nintendo managed to make even better tracks than the last time. So I suppose that means I'm naturally obligated to rank the best and the worst tracks from Wave Free. I'll mainly be basing this list on how fun the tracks are and how they compare to their original versions. And before I begin, make sure to subscribe so that you can keep up with all of my wacky shenanigans. I know this channel's really small, but any support you can give is really appreciated. Anyways, let's rank these awesome tracks, shall we? Starting off this list, we have Tours London Loop. I remember playing this track when it first came out, and I'm very happy to have the chance to play it again. This course features a lot of narrow roads and sharp turns, similar to how they are in Europe. It also contains a lot of real-life landmarks from London as well, like Big Ben, St. Paul's Cathedral, and so many others. Like seriously, I could make an entire video talking about all the landmarks in this track alone, but I'm not gonna do that. The overall layout of the track is very enjoyable as well. Of course, it does help that it's one of those tracks that contains 3 different laps, and it's done really well here. My favorite part has to be on the 3rd lap, when all the chain chomps get loose and start running about wrecking havoc. Or what about the part where you get to trick off the drawbridge that moves up and down? And who could forget about the road with all the double-decker buses? This track really is amazing, and I've gotta say, the music isn't at all what I imagine British music sounding like, but it's such a bop that I don't even care. I really wish that I didn't have to put this track at the bottom of this list, but unfortunately, one of them had to take the fall. Even though this course is my least favorite of the bunch, it's still a really excellent track that definitely deserves more recognition. Next on this list is Tours Berlin Byways. It's the same Sun and Dance as London Loop, except now we're in Germany. Once again, every lap here is different, leading to a more diverse course layout. It's got lots of sharp turns and a bunch of cars you have to avoid along the way. There's also a lot of boost panels and ramps, which only add to the fun. Overall, I found this one to be more difficult than London Loop due to all the vehicles on the road, but I also feel like it has more variety. You'll race on a subway, under the Brandenburg Gate, through a park, and even past the Berlin Wall. That's an interesting thing to include, seeing how many people suffered under its standing, but okay. And what's with the music on this track? It sounds like it came straight out of Geometry Dash or something. I mean, hey, I'm not complaining or anything. It's just a little strange. Every part of this track is filled with creativity, and I know that no matter what, it'll show you a good time. You know that the booster course pass is really amazing when I have to put one of the greatest Mario Kart tracks of all time near the bottom. I love 3DS Rock Mountain, but unfortunately, I don't think this one lives up to the original. The most noticeable change is the graphics. Like with some of the tracks from previous waves, the visuals aren't nearly as impressive as the base game. Some things look okay, but the mountain itself looks atrocious, and the trees are so bland that I throw up at my mouth a little every time I see them. It's not the biggest game changer in the world, but it certainly feels out of place compared to the rest of the tracks. Aside from that, there really aren't any other major changes. You still drive through a cave in the beginning and glide through the mountains in the middle, and at the end, you still drive up the side of the mountain, except now, it's an anti-gravity section. I don't mind the change, but they replaced some of the dash panels for spin boost pillars, and it's not nearly as exhilarating as it used to be. This is an okay remake at best, but there's definitely better versions of this track out there. If there's one thing we don't have enough of in Mario Kart, it's spooky themed tracks. And luckily, GBA Boo Lake has made a spectacular return in Wave 3. The course immediately starts off with a bang, with ramps and sharp turns being the main obstacle. After a split path, you'll enter anti-gravity before submerging underwater on a twisted road. There's a lot of tight turns down there, but it isn't long before you're tricking your way to the finish line. Every part of this track is so much fun, and is the exact definition of what a retro track should be. I mean, it's always a good time when a retro track feels like a brand new stage. That's when you know you've got something special. Now, with all that being said, there's just one tiny problem I have with this track. It's too short. Every time I play this level, I feel like it's over way too quickly. I understand that it's a Super Circuit track and all, but I don't feel like I have this problem with other tracks from that game. Like I said, it really doesn't matter all that much in the end. No matter how you slice it, this will always be one amazing track. I'm not gonna lie, I was really conflicted as to where to put DS Peach Gardens on this list. On one hand, we have a remake of an okay track at best, but on the other hand,
It's Peach Gardens!
I grew up with Mario Kart DS, so naturally, I'm pretty biased towards these tracks. But damn it, Nintendo just had to pull another Wario Stadium and change half the track. Why do you have to do this, guys? Why mess with perfection? So this track is pretty different from the original version. It's mostly smaller changes, like the removal of several shortcuts. But there's also some bigger changes, like the addition of this new piranha plant. The whole thing feels a little off, but it's still Peach Gardens at the end of the day, no questions about it. But then you get to the third lap, and all of a sudden, you're going for this completely new area. Then the next thing you know, you're driving through the course backwards, and oh my gosh, this is so wrong! Like, it works, but why? No other track in the booster course pass, aside from the tour tracks, is like this. I will admit that the new gliding section is really cool, and it's pretty neat that you can fly through all of the new character hedges, but why? Why would you change such an amazing track, Nintendo? It didn't need any improvements, it was already perfect, why? That's it, I can't take it anymore. Stupid lousy track. I mean, wow, what a great track, guys! Wow, yippee! Look, I know that I just went on a rant about how awful all these changes are, but they're really not that bad. All of the new additions are fun, and mix up the course in a new and exciting way. As long as you're not a hardcore, no-nonsense Mario Kart DS fan like myself, I can assure you that this track will certainly be one of your favorites. Oh, Merry Christmas! Oh wait, those aren't my lines. Well, I guess I'll just have to improvise my review of Tor's Merry Mountain. I have very fond memories of playing this track in Tor when it first came out, and I'm very excited to see it back in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Most Tor tracks are based on real-life places, like London and Berlin, but this one's unique in that this place doesn't actually exist. If any of you out there are Santa believers, I'm so sorry. The track starts off in a Christmas-themed village with sparkly lights and holiday decorations everywhere. From there, you can choose to continue on the road up the mountain, or drive up the train tracks along the edge. After that, you'll continue ascending the icy mountain before being sent into anti-gravity. Then you'll make a sharp turn, and drive down the steep mountainside with a graceful glide to finish it off. This is absolutely magical. It's by far one of the best Mario Kart tracks I've ever played, and is truly unlike any other. I mean, they even brought back the half pipes from Mario Kart Wii! All I know is that this track is a joy to race on, and is one that everyone needs to try.
Oh my gosh! How could I have possibly put 3DS Rainbow Road in anything besides number 1? Ah!
The truth is, this isn't my favorite Rainbow Road. I much prefer the likes of DS and Wii's Rainbow Roads, but this one isn't too bad either. It's got more creativity than almost any other track in the entire series, so let's get into it already. The track starts off with some basic turns and a few ramps, but it isn't long before you enter a downwards helix. The next thing you know, you're gliding through space and driving on the rings of Saturn. Then the road gets all twisty for a while, but it's okay, because after that, you're driving on the literal moon doing tricks off of all of the craters. Then the third lap starts up, the music picks up, and you're driving through this huge tube with dash panels spinning all around. And it all ends with a beautiful glide through an asteroid field before you turn back around towards the finish line. And I know this is gonna sound repetitive and all, but damn is this a good track. There isn't a single moment where I feel bored on this track because there's always something new being thrown your way. The course layout contains some of the most unique elements I've ever seen in a racing game, and it's truly something you just have to experience. And I just have to mention the visuals as well. If you thought Rainbow Roads looked good before this one, well boy are you missing out. The translucent road combined with the majestic sky helped to create one of the most beautiful video game levels of all time. This track does so many things right that it's near perfection, but there is one other track from this wave that's just a little bit better than this. You already know what it is. How could I possibly give the number 1 spot to anything other than Wii Maple Treeway? I know I'm speaking with a lot of bias here, but this is one of the greatest Mario Kart tracks of all time. Come on, don't deny it. You know this track is better than Rainbow Road, and for a lot of different reasons. The majority of this level takes place on a large tree in the middle of autumn, and it looks really cool. There's just something so warm and inviting about all of the red and orange leaves everywhere, and the track itself is even better. You'll drive through piles of leaves, dodge life-size wigglers, and even go inside the tree at one point. And at the end, you make an epic glide to the finish. I personally prefer the bridge from the original, but the gliding section is just as fun. Plus, there's another area where you can use a half-pipe, which is just splendid! And I'd be a fool if I didn't mention the music at least once. Sure, it's not as good as the original, but that hasn't stopped it from getting stuck in my head a million times already. So that begs the question, do I prefer this remake over the original track? No, of course not, but it's still got just as much charm and creativity as that one. I know it's a hot take, but no matter what you say, this will always be my favorite track from Wave 3. The fourth wave of the Mario Kart Booster Course passes finally come out to both critical and commercial success. Aside from getting 8 terrific new tracks, this wave also introduced a brand new character, Birdo. Which is also the first character to be added since 2018. Gosh, that's depressing. But as for the tracks, oh, this wave sure did deliver. So just like all the other times, I'll be ranking each of the 8 tracks from worst to best. I'll mainly be focusing on each track's layout, what kind of obstacles they contain, and whether or not they have the cool factor. Now then, let out a in celebration and let's get to it. Coming in at last place is Tor's Amsterdam Drift. Let me start off by saying that there isn't anything inherently wrong with this track. In fact, it's pretty amazing that even the more generic courses are as fun as they are, which is a testament of how great the Booster Course Pass really is. Now with all that being said, this track doesn't do anything too interesting either. All 3 laps are different, yes, but there's not a whole lot that sticks out to me about this one. I guess the most memorable part is the underwater section during the second lap, but even that kinda drags on after a while. I do really like the places you drive through, like a field filled with flowers, on the top of a boat, and through a busy road with moving trams, but it doesn't get much more exciting than that. I will say that the scenery looks really nice, and the part with all the monuments is a nice change of pace, but everything else just feels kind of meh. Also, is it just me, or does anyone else always get really confused while playing this track? I constantly find myself going the wrong way and crashing into walls because I can never remember the correct way to go. Maybe that's just my own fault, but Amsterdam Drift is an average track at best. It'll show you a good time, but there's clearly better levels out there. Next up at number 7 is GBA Riverside Park. I don't really have much of a personal connection to Super Circuit, but even so, I was still pretty happy when I heard this track was coming over. This course is definitely more basic compared to some of the Super Circuit remakes we've seen in the past, but I still think this one brings a lot to the table. The biggest change has to be the graphical overhaul. This track looks just as good, if not better, than some of the tracks from the base game. Like seriously, this does not look like it came from the same DLC as Toad Circuit and Shroom Ridge. Not to mention, so many fun elements have been added to give this course a little more flair. From things like a bridge you can trick off of, to giant mud piles, to a brand new cave section at the end, everything just feels so polished. All of the new elements feel amazing and do a great job fitting in with the theme. None of the changes take away from what made the original special either, which is always the best case scenario when it comes to retro tracks. You know, this track is almost like a fancy slice of cheese. Sure, it's just cheese, but damn is it some good cheese. And I haven't even mentioned the best new addition to this course. Nintendo added all of these patooies that just waddle around the track, and they're so cool! I mean, just look at them! Don't you wish you could walk as cool as they do? I think I'm the first person in human history to be envious of a plant. Oh yeah, man. At number 6 we have DS Mario Circuit. Now if you've seen any of my past ranking videos, you probably remember that Mario Kart DS is one of my favorites. It's the game I grew up with. It's the game I played the most. It's the game that I tuck into bed every night. It is, in my opinion, the definitive Mario Kart experience. But even a hardcore fan such as myself can see that this remake isn't that great. Don't get me wrong, I love the original, and I'm more than happy to see this track get a remake, but it's clear that not as much love got put into this course as the rest of the tracks from this wave. The biggest problem is that this level suffers from what I like to call Mario Kart Tour Syndrome. Symptoms include boring textures, a lack of interesting set pieces, and the most underwhelming graphics you've ever seen. Every wave so far has had at least one victim of this disease, and it seems like this time, it was DS Mario Circuit's turn to bite the bullet. Now it's not like it's that big of a deal. I mean, it's not like anyone's playing these tracks for the graphics or anything, but this kind of slander just doesn't sit right with me. Aside from that, there's a quote, new forest section. You know, it's actually kind of funny how Nintendo tried to act like this was some brand new area, when all they did was add some trees to a part of the track that was already in the original. I could leave bread out for a month and Nintendo would still think that it's edible. Do they really not know what new is? There's also this new wiggler that wakes up on the third lap and is sort of a threat, not really. And that's it! Everything else is exactly how it was in the original, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air if I'm being honest. These changes were a bit hard to swallow at first, but hey, it works. This version of the track is fine enough, but if I'm going to play DS Mario Circuit, I think I'll just stick to old reliable. Coming in at number 5 is Tour's Bangkok Rush. This track is pretty awesome, as it's another one that contains 3 separate laps. The first one takes you through a market, and along the streets of Bangkok. There's this really cool part at the beginning, where there's a little bit of water, and you get to trick off the boats floating about. Then on the second lap, you get to drive through a different part of the city, and even fly over the Monument of Democracy. And then the third lap takes you through a parking garage, and then you're bouncing off tents like it's Mushroom George, and then you're driving on the tracks of the BTS SkyTrain. The ending to this track is so amazing because you can either go up or down, and the paths keep splitting up, and it's just so neat. This track is one of the most unique tracks in the entire series, and is definitely one of the better tour ones we've seen come over. There's plenty more to this track than I could possibly describe in this video, so make sure to play this track for yourself in order to experience all that it has in store for you. It's about time we got a Double Dash track as part of the Booster Course Pass, and GCN Waluigi Stadium is the perfect one to kick things off. Right off the bat, you can tell this track is amazing because it's themed around everyone's favorite Nintendo character, Waluigi.
Yeah!
But in all seriousness, this was always one of the best tracks back in Double Dash, and it's still one of the best tracks now. There's been a few changes made to enhance the track, and in my opinion, they're all for the better. The biggest change is towards the half-pipe section in the middle. Now all those Piranha Plant cutouts are at an angle, making them more appealing to look at. Plus, there's tires in the road now that can get in your way. But the most drastic change is the addition of several new routes that are only accessible by going off the half-pipes at certain angles. This is one of the coolest things Mario Kart's ever done. This isn't your average cutting through the grass with a mushroom nonsense. No, this takes actual skill to pull off. And it can be really challenging too, but it's also really rewarding when you pull it off because it gives you access to things like extra item boxes or a secret glide ramp. Some people might say this makes this version inferior to the original, but personally, I think it adds to the experience tenfold. And aside from that, there really isn't too much that's changed. The bumps, the hills, and rings of fire are all still here, and the rest of the half-pipes have returned from Wii, so it really isn't that jarring. Waluigi Stadium will always be a fan favorite, and I believe that this version truly did this track justice. At number 3, we have none other than Tour Singapore Speedway. Man, oh man, is this an inventive track. This is by far one of the nicest looking tour tracks we've gotten yet, which isn't saying much seeing as how most of them look, but still, this course looks incredible. Just like all the other tour tracks, this one features 3 completely separate laps, and boy are they a doozy. The first one brings you on top of the Marina Bay Sands, where you'll drive past Goombas floating on inner tubes. After that is this huge gliding section where you'll fly through rings and soar above a huge soccer arena. Then the second lap will send you through a bright and colorful market, with a big glide through Merlion Park afterwards. And on the third lap, you guessed it, there's yet another gliding section, this time offering a beautiful view of the surrounding city. Then you'll travel back through the market before making your way back to the finish line. And let me tell you, that's not even half of the things you'll experience here. There's so many elements to this track that there's no way I can remember them all because it's just that spectacular. And no, that's not me just being lazy. There's seriously dozens of different things to see and do here, which makes this course an easy pick to be near the top of this list. While I wouldn't say it's the best track from Wave 4, I can say that I really like what I see here, and I hope to see more tracks like it in the future. I had a really hard time deciding which track should go in the number 1 spot, and after thinking about it for a long time, I think it's clear that Wii DK Summit isn't it. Now if you know me, you know that Mario Kart Wii is and always will be my favorite Mario Kart game of all time. And I'm honestly really happy this course got chosen to come back, but even so, I still don't think it's the best track from Wave 4. It's not that there's anything wrong here, I just like one of the other levels just a little bit better. But we'll get to that later. For now... Woo! DK Summit! This is one of the greatest tracks in Mario Kart Wii, and now it's one of the greatest tracks in Mario Kart 8, and I couldn't be more excited. I mean, there's just so much to love about this remake. You've got the half pipes from Mario Kart Wii, the snowboarding Shy Guys, the moguls, the gap cut. Yes, the gap cut, the glitch that allows you to jump over the gaps is back and easier than ever. Plus, the half pipe controls actually feel good now. I don't know if Nintendo changed them in the update or what, but they certainly feel better than they did back in Wave 3. This is an example of a perfect remake. Everything people loved about the original is back without a single flaw, and I can't think of a single thing I'd want changed. If you've been paying attention, you already know that the brand new track Yoshi's Island is in the number 1 spot. Never did I think that we would get a brand new Mario Kart track that's themed around a Super Nintendo game that came out nearly 30 years ago. But boy am I sure glad they did, because this course absolutely blew it out of the water. The first thing I want to point out is all of the characters in the background. I mean, you can see just about everybody. Huffin' Puffins, Pedal Guys, Incoming Chomps, my boy Poochie. The amount of fan service here is incredible. It almost feels out of place compared to all the other tracks because of how detailed it is, and that's something I'll take any day. I also love the places you'll drive through. You'll dodge sidesteppers crawling underwater, drive through a diamond-filled cave, and even fly up in the clouds. And at the end when you're gliding down, you can hit this winged cloud to reveal a secret shortcut that lets you hop through a gold ring and just... yes! So much yes! There are so many different elements to this track that it's honestly pretty insane. I mean, there are things here, like that aforementioned shortcut, that have never been done in Mario Kart before, and it's so exciting! And you've just gotta love all of the little musical Easter eggs. From the tune that plays on the starting line to the song that appears on the results screen. It's all remixed from the original Yoshi's Island, and it couldn't sound better. Every little detail on this track oozes perfection and brings me so much joy every time I play it. It was a close call, but in the end, I think it's safe to say that Yoshi's Island is easily the best track from Wave 4. Oh my gosh, the coins have little Yoshi faces on them. Take my money, take my money! I think it's safe to say that Wave 5 of the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass is an absolute masterpiece. It saw the return of several fan-favorite characters, plenty of amazing new retro tracks, and even a brand new one as well. And yes, I know I'm a little late to the party, but it's like I always say, better late than never. I say as I drink my 2-week-old expired milk. So as we near the end of the Booster Course Pass, let's rank all of the tracks from Wave 5 from worst to best. I'll mainly be focusing on how creative the tracks are, how they compare to their original counterparts, and anything else I find interesting about them. So without further ado, get those karts revved up folks, cause it's time for the countdown! In today's last place spot, we have GBA Sunset Wilds. Now here's a track that I was honestly pretty excited for, but wasn't too thrilled with once I finally got around to it. The main problem is that it doesn't do a whole awful lot. There's some dash panels here and there, and even a few elevation changes, but I honestly don't find any of these features to be too lasting. This course is incredibly flat, and just doesn't do a whole lot to stand out on its own. Everything here feels like it's been done to death before, and isn't memorable in the slightest. I do really like all of the Shy Guys dancing in the middle of the road now, it's just a shame they don't latch onto your cart anymore. But the biggest downgrade to this track, in my opinion, is the time of day. I mean, just take a look at what happens when you cross over the finish line! Did you see that? Exactly, you didn't, because nothing happened! Back in Super Circuit, the time of day would gradually change as you go from lap to lap. This was a really cool touch because it really emphasized that this is indeed a sunset. It was even like this in the Mario Kart Tour version, but here, it just stays the same across all 3 laps! How is the original rendition of this course from over 20 years ago more superior than its modern day counterpart? I can't imagine it be that hard to change the color of the skybox, and if it is, why'd he get special treatment? Look, this is still far from a bad track, and I mean really far. But because of the historical inaccuracies and the frankly boring level design, I'm going to have to give this one a 2-star review. You know where I've always wanted to go? Woohoo Island, with Los Angeles being a close 17th. Still, Tour Los Angeles Labs is a track I've been wanting to come over for a while now. I remember playing it back when it first came out and absolutely loving all of the different versions. So seeing it finally make the jump into glorious HD was something truly special. I remember racing home, booting it up, and... this is just okay. As a Mario Kart Tour track back in 2020, this was pretty good. As a Mario Kart 8 track nowadays, this is a joke. I'll at least give it the benefit of the doubt and say it's not bad. The only problem is it's not great either. I don't know what it is, but this track just feels botched. It's like they tried to do something new and exciting with this course, but ended up saying, you know what'd be funny? And it's a shame too, because this track has a lot of really cool ideas, like driving along the beach and flying over Dodger Stadium. Yet every time I play this track, I almost find myself being bored. There's just so many parts where it's just long stretches of road with nothing of note happening. Like if I want that, I'll just go out driving in real life. Because as it stands, there just isn't enough here to keep me interested. Why couldn't there be a part where you head inside the LA Convention Center? That would have been a neat little throwback to Nintendo's history here. They could have had you drive through their E3 display, and there could have been so many little references, and it could have been so cool! Oh. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. At number 6 on this list, we have Tour Athens Dash. Finally, a track with some meat on its bones. This course is one of the more recent additions to Mario's mobile extravaganza, so to see it now in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe isn't necessarily the shocker of the year. But hey, Nintendo did a far better job remaking this track than with Los Angeles Laps, mainly because they actually did something with it. This course has so much going on and just feels so lively. Whether it's driving through the Parthenon, circling around the Theater of Dionysus, or even dodging boulders up the Acropolis. Every single step of the way is filled with so much charm that's undeniably unmatched. I mean, the amount of shortcuts and extra features make this course far more memorable than most of the other tour ones. Even the music is especially good. I honestly think this song tops some of the ones from the base game for its use of horns alone. All I can say is that if Socrates could see this, he'd certainly be proud of what's been made of his homeland.
Perfection.
Number 5. Wii Koopa Cape. I think I need to check my notes. Okay, Mario Kart Wii is my favorite Mario Kart game of all time. This is common knowledge by now, it's in all the history books. So why then do I not find this remake of one of my favorite tracks from that game not nearly as much as I thought I would? Well, the only way to answer that is with a hearty, I don't know. Look, I love the original Koopa Cape. It's amazing, it's fantastic, it's like a second home to me. But this one, for some reason, just doesn't click with me. There's something about this remake that just feels off, and I honestly don't have a single clue as to why. There isn't anything truly awful about this course as far as I'm aware, and there's plenty of parts they updated that definitely improve it over the original. From things like removing the old glide ramp and adding a half pipe to the underwater section. These things make the track feel so much more lively. They aren't necessarily game changers, but they do help this version to stand out on its own. And besides, the remix isn't half bad as well. Of course it's not as good as the original, but it's still a bop. At the end of the day, I don't think I'll ever know why I despise this remake as much as I do. I could say it's because I'm tired of Nintendo constantly remaking this course and not changing nearly enough about it to make it substantial. I could say that. But I won't! Nintendo can recycle this track as many times as they like, and I wouldn't care! I should know, I'm still drinking expired milk. Remember back in Paper Mario the Origami King when there was that mission where you had to go on that cruise ship to find Bobby's fuse and fight off Gooper Blooper? Those were fun times. Well, I'm happy to report that that level has been turned into its very own Mario Kart track. I know I just made a lot of you really upset, but you have to admit, I was going somewhere with that. But anyways, GCN Daisy Cruiser is a fan favorite for many, myself included. And although it wasn't at the top of my Booster Course Pass wishlist, I'm still really happy it's here because this is definitely the best rendition of this course to date. I mean, it's got everything people loved about the original. The moving tables from the dining hall, the pool that you can drive through on the top deck, that not-so-secret shortcut underneath the boat. Everything is back and better than ever in glorious Mario Kart 8 fashion. But aside from having an updated color palette, there really isn't too much that's changed. It isn't the biggest deal in the world or anything, but I would have liked if they had at least changed something. Then again, it is a go-kart track on a cruise ship, so who am I to judge?
Perfection.
Number 3. Wii Moonview Highway. Now that's what I'm talking about! This is a track that I really wanted to see come back, but didn't think it was likely due to how many Mario Kart Wii tracks were in the game already. But Nintendo delivered in one of the most incredible ways possible. First up, oh man does this track look good! Maybe it's just me, but I think this track looks incredible! Way better than most of the other tracks in the Booster Course Pass, that's for sure. It could pass for a model! Second, I love how it's so much easier to hit all of the dash panels now. It was possible in the original, but unless you were a taskbot, you probably weren't going to pull it off. Now it's way easier to do, and is much more fun since you get to go super fast. One other thing I'd like to note is how much easier this course is compared to the Wii one. It feels like there's a lot less traffic on the road, which definitely makes this version feel a bit easier. It's really up to your preference as to which difficulty you like, but personally, I like pain. Oh, and I love how Nintendo brought back the bomb cars just for this track. I was actually pretty surprised that they did that. This remake is as close to perfect as I think it can get. While it doesn't necessarily replace the original, it definitely matches it in terms of quality and flashiness.
Jetson, get off the toilet! We have to start coming up with ideas for those new Mario Kart tracks! Sorry boss, I'll be out in a minute. Hey, I've got an idea!
And that's how Squeaky Clean Sprint was born. Okay, I think we all need to stop and appreciate the genius of this level. The concept of turning a literal bathroom into a racetrack is so creative that I don't think anything could ever top it. Seriously. You start off by driving through a sink full of water, and then hopping into a bathtub filled with goodies. Then you get sucked down the drain, and you have to travel through the pipes while driving through other people's filth. Then you get shot out and have to go around this fan that's blowing everything, and you can trick off the toilet water, and it's perfect! The layout is simple, but everything about it is just so unique! Nintendo really went all out with the theming here, because every little detail has so much charm. I just love seeing all of the Easter eggs in the background. It's been quite a while since we've seen a track as special as this one, and I think Nintendo did an amazing job with it. Plus, there's so many shortcuts that each lap almost feels like a completely different experience. There aren't many tracks that can pull that off, and I find that to be extremely commendable. This is a Mario Kart track that you will never forget due to just how fun and creative it really is. Back when the trailer for Wave 5 first came out, I wasn't really sure which new track was going to be my favorite. However, I did not anticipate that the one I'd end up liking the most would be... what? Tour Vancouver Velocity. I'd played this track a few times several years ago and completely forgotten about its existence. But when I played it again in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, woo! This course is amazing! I was not expecting to be so blown away by a Mario Kart Tour track, but it happened! Everything about it is just so thrilling! I've played this course over and over again, and I still find myself enjoying it just as much as the first time I laid eyes on it. I guess the first thing I have to bring up is the fact that it takes place in the same city as the best Mario and Sonic at the Olympics Games! But even better are the places you'll drive through. How about driving along the Capilano Suspension Bridge, traveling under the Vancouver Olympics Cauldron, and even dodging ice skating Shy Guys in Rogers Arena? And the bright city lights combined with the bountiful stars above only add to the experience. Everything here is just perfect. I did not ever think that a Mario Kart Tour track would ever make it to the top of one of these lists, but I'll be darned. Tour Vancouver Velocity is somehow the best track from Wave 5 of the Booster Course Pass. You done good, Canada. You done good.
Well, it's the end of an era. The final wave of the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass has been released, and it feels surreal to think that we've made it this far so fast. I mean, doesn't it feel like just yesterday we were all fanboying over the sight of 3DS Toad Circuit? Said no one ever! So, for the final time, let's rank all of the tracks in this wave from worst to best. I'll mainly be focusing on what makes each course special, any improvements that have been made compared to their original counterparts, and other things of that nature.
But first, let's pay our respects to the tracks that didn't make the cut and will forever be unplayable in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. SNES Mario Circuit 1, SNES Mario Circuit 2, SNES Mario Circuit 3 because they botched it, SNES Mario Circuit 4.
Gosh, this is gonna take a lot longer than I thought. Well, anyways, while I do that, why don't I show you my ranking so that you don't have to sit through all this? Let's go!
3.
In last place we have Tor Roma Vanti. I've gotta be honest with you guys, I found this course to be incredibly forgettable. Not bad by any means, but nothing about it really stuck out in my mind. I really enjoy the part where you're circling around the Colosseum, and then you jump down towards the Roman Forum, and the section on the third lap where you drive through the Colosseum dodging chain chomps is really cool as well. But other than that, it's mostly just pretty basic turns, a few ramps here and there, and the occasional real-life monument. There's nothing wrong with any of these things, but I also feel like there isn't enough here to warrant playing this track more than once. The only saving grace here is the music. However, I think we can say that about every course at this point, so it's not really that big a deal. Again, there's not really anything wrong with this track, but compared to this wave's other offerings, this one just doesn't do it for me. Up next is this wave's other big city course, Tour Madrid Drive. Now this is how you adapt a tour track. This course feels much more lively than Roma Vanti, and it's honestly not even close. You'll dodge a Wiggler in Plaza Mayor, glide through Retiro Park, and even dodge soccer balls in Santiago Bernabeu Stadium. Oh, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land called it wants its shopping mall back. Gah! There's also far more elements here compared to the previous track. More trick ramps, more obstacles on the road, more everything! But probably the best part of all is that in the Prado Museum, all of the paintings have been replaced with Mario artwork. Imagine walking into an art museum and seeing this on the wall. I would literally scream. Overall, this course isn't the most groundbreaking transition we've gotten over the past 2 years. But there's still a lot here to offer a suitable amount of enjoyment.
Oh, final wave. Okay, let's go. Oh, come on. Go! Yes, let's go! Daisy Circuit, let's go! Oh, and you said they weren't gonna add it!
I like this one. Wii Daisy Circuit was the last track I thought would be brought back, especially this late into the game. But boy oh boy was I mistaken, because this course is back and better than ever. To start, the graphics here look so good! The general aesthetic already looked amazing back in Mario Kart Wii, so imagine how beautiful it looks now that it's in magnificent HD! There's also a new gliding section located where that old through the building shortcut used to be, and it fits in really nicely. And, there's a new ramp after the tunnel, and the music's really good, and I'll be the first one to defend this track till the cows come home, or as I like to say, until Nintendo makes Mario Kart 9. But even I have to admit that this course is incredibly basic. That doesn't make it bad in any way at all, but it does also feel a bit lacking compared to the rest of the offerings from this wave. The changes made to this version are welcome additions, but it also isn't anything that's gonna make people say, "Oh man, did you see the daisies?" This is still one of my favorite tracks at the end of the day, and it'll always have a special place in my heart. But if we're looking at it from a critical perspective, then there really isn't all too much to say. I don't know what kind of Freedius Wario Shipyard clone this course thinks it is, but it is certainly actually pretty fun. Piranha Plant Cove is its name, and Calling My Bluff is its game. This track was added to Tour long after I'd removed that game from my cranium, so playing it here was my first time seeing all it had to offer. And I'll admit, my expectations were pretty low going into it. I mean, come on. Water, Mario Kart Tour level design, water, those are my three biggest fears. But I'll be darned, this course somehow managed to show me a good time. You'll climb through ruins, swim past hungry unagis, trick off the remains of sunken ships, and so much more! The theme here is much more than just underwater, and each lap feels completely distinct from one another. Even the music managed to get on my good side. I've been humming this tune for days, and I don't think I'll be stopping anytime soon. There's a surprising amount of things to this track, and I think you'll find it to be very delightful just as I have. Next up at number 4 is... Hold on, I feel like I've seen this course somewhere before. I've got it, we went to high school together!
Wait, you mean that this is and that's no way.
Yes way, this is SNES Bowser Castle Free, and holy crap did it get a glow up. This track is nearly unrecognizable from its Super Nintendo counterpart. Even though the layout is nearly identical, everything else about it has been so Mario Kart 8ified to the point where it literally feels like a brand new course. Most of the road is now in anti-gravity, there's loads more ramps and lava and other things you have to worry about, and you can even drive on top of the walls if you want. Now if only I had the skills to do so. Not to mention the music is absolutely rockin'! The guitars sound so intense, which is extremely fitting seeing as this is a very intense location. My only complaint is that the whole thing does feel a bit short, but that's to be expected, seeing as how it does come from Super Mario Kart. It's so crazy to me that this is the first time we've ever seen a SNES Bowser Castle track get remade! And I think that Nintendo has definitely earned a gold star with this one. Even though I never played Mario Kart Double Dash growing up, I still have a lot of memories playing GC on DK Mountain back in Mario Kart Wii. This is a course that feels made for Mario Kart 8. It always felt a little clunky back in Wii, so luckily, this version fixed up all of its little issues. The biggest change of all is the ginormous graphical overhaul. This track has never looked more colorful, and I'm all for it. The bridge at the end now also sways in the wind, there's some new DK barrels on the track, and the road itself is much more twisty. All of these changes greatly enhance the DK Mountain experience, and ultimately make it the best version of the course to date. The only issue is that the part where you're driving down the side of the mountain doesn't feel nearly as steep or momentum-based as it did in the past. But that's such a minor inconvenience that it really doesn't amount to much. If you're a fan of mountain-based go-karting tracks, or at least a fan of a certain tie-wearing monkey, you'll no doubt find this course to be one of your favorites. And coming in at number 2 is... a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. 3DS Rosalina's Ice World is a track I don't think anyone was expecting to make a comeback, but I'm honestly really stoked that it did. Everyone else, not so much. I've never understood why this course gets so much hate. I mean, it's a track themed around Super Mario Galaxy, the greatest video game of all time, as well as... I'm sweating, but my point is, this course is a wonderful time and one of Mario Kart 7's finest. As for Mario Kart 8, this track is beautiful! This place looks absolutely amazing! Easily a 10 out of 10 for the graphics alone! And they added 2 new half pipes in this section, which do feel kind of awkward, but are still really fun regardless! And there's a new shortcut at the end that shaves off a considerable amount of time per lap. And the music is now one of the best Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tunes, and anyone else who disagrees is just flat out wrong. And you can see the Comet Observatory as well as Gateway Galaxy in the background. And they waited this long to give it to us. This course is an absolute delight that improves upon the original in almost every single way. I know a lot of people won't agree with me when I say this, but I think this is one of the greatest tracks we've gotten in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That's 1 point for me, 8 billion points for everyone else. Huh. December 25th, 2009. I woke up early that morning, excited to open up all of the presents that were waiting for me that Christmas morning. I couldn't tell you what half of those presents were nowadays, but I do remember one present that would go on to change my life forever. Mario Kart Wii. I played the hell out of this game all morning and was immediately in love. The characters, the courses, the controls, everything about it was pure imaginative fun, and at the time, I couldn't get enough of it. But there was one part about the game I loved more than anything else. Rainbow Road. I adore Mario Kart Wii's Rainbow Road. I used to play this track all the time with my dad. It was always so fun watching us both fly off while trying to take ridiculous shortcuts, and it was always a blast every time we played it. As time's gone on, I still come back to this course regularly because of the memories I have with it. And it will always be my favorite Mario Kart track of all time. This is quite possibly one of the best remakes of a Mario Kart course I've ever seen! The amount of polish and improvements that have been made easily outdo any other track from the Booster Course Pass, and it's not even close. The visuals are so aesthetically pleasing that it makes all other courses look ugly by comparison. And I don't know how they did it, but they actually managed to nail the exact feeling of the original. The half-pipes don't feel nearly as wonky as they did in previous tracks, and everything else feels like a one-to-one recreation. And by gosh, did they do an amazing job with the music! This is the best Mario Kart song of all time, and this remix absolutely kills it. Plus, they even went as far as to still include the little fire effect that occurs when you fall off the course and burn up in the atmosphere. Everything about this track is exactly what I wanted out of a remake of Mario Kart Wii's Rainbow Road. Not only is this my favorite course from Wave 6, but my favorite Mario Kart track of all time. And with that, I think I'm about done with my Mario Kart course remembrance. Let's check back in to hear my closing remarks.
3DS Wario Shipyard, 3DS Maka Woohoo, 3DS Bowser's Castle, and Tor's Piranha Plant Pipeline. May they forever rest in peace. The Mario Kart Booster Course Pass is an interesting piece of Mario Kart history. Everything about it, from the content that was offered to the time in which it came out, was just very different from what we were used to at the time. I remember back when this was first announced, I was almost angry at Nintendo for making this instead of Mario Kart 9. Especially in the beginning when they were just porting over Mario Kart Tour tracks. Like, that isn't a grass texture, that's just green! But in the end, Nintendo proved me wrong yet again. The quality of the courses got better as time went on, and the amount of new things they tried really blew my expectations out of the water. It's been a bumpy ride for sure, but even after all the lows, the highs, and 3DS Toad Circuit, I'm still really happy we got the tracks that we did. And I think this is like some amazing groundwork for the future of Mario Kart. Well, at least we can finally put Mario Kart 8 behind us and move on to a brand new generation of Mario Kart. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later, because as you all know, it feels like it's been a decade since the last Mario Kart game came out.
Yep, those were the good old days.